Good day. Welcome to another lesson on our program, Entrepreneurship Master Program. Today we're looking at the skills program. How do you implement systems and procedures? And today's module is Management and Controls Case Study. But before we get into the case studies, I just want to give you the background on management systems and procedures, what we have gone through so far, and then we'll get into our case studies. So what is management systems and controls? Basically, what we're talking about there is a business or an organization must have systems and procedures. They must put systems and procedures in place to manage the business activities. Because without systems and procedures, a business will not be able to control its activities. So if you don't have rules within your organization that governs the operations, somebody said you'll be like animals. We don't have controls. No one is controlling anyone. People will be doing as they please. So for a business to be sustainable, you need to have systems and procedures in place. And what are systems and procedures? Basically, a business must have a quality management system. So a quality management system is the system that a business implements to control the activities that are taking place within the organization, so that there can be, one, consistency, and two, there can be controls, so that employees and partners and whoever who is engaging with the business knows that there are certain rules that needs to be followed during that relationship. Because if there are no rules that are followed, employees will do as they please, the partners will do as they please, and whoever that is dealing, stakeholders, will do as they please, because you don't have controls in place. And that's not how you run a business. I mean, that is like if you are running a family or you have a family, you'll have certain rules that, even though they are not written rules in a family environment, but you have rules in terms of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Your partner will know what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. Your kids will know, okay, sometimes they push the boundaries, but they will know what is acceptable and what is not. Similarly, in the business, there must be rules, there must be procedures that needs to be followed when certain things are done. Okay, and unlike in the family settings, because obviously we're using the whatever community or the cultural norms, in business, the rules and the procedures and the processes that a business is supposed to follow, they must be documented. There must be documents that can be referred to in terms of when there's disputes between maybe an employee and employer, to say these are the procedures, these are the activities that are expected from you as an employee, and you fail to implement them this way, maybe you might want to take disciplinary proceedings against, or institute disciplinary proceedings against the employee. So, but there must be basis that you can institute such disciplinary proceedings. You can't, because there are labor laws, there are laws that governs your employer-employee relationship. There is a contracts involved, there's labor law involved. So you can't just maybe fire employee if there are any differences without having proper processes and procedures that employee understood and failed to follow. And then, but it's not only, the systems and procedures are not only important for disciplinary proceedings or disciplinary action, but they instill that responsibility within the employees, because they know there's written procedures that they're supposed to follow. So now, if they can't do as they please, because if they do, they know that there might be consequences. So now that will somehow guide and motivate employees to do certain things, rather than if there are no rules, if there are no processes, if there are no procedures, employees will learn as they go. and they might make a mistake and they say, okay, I didn't know. That's on the disciplinary side. But as I said, that it's not only for disciplinary purposes, it's also for customer service. Remember, if you are not following processes, if you're not following procedures, standard procedures, let's say you are manufacturing fat cakes. If you don't have a process and procedures that you follow to produce to cook the fat cakes, then the fat cakes that you produce today might be different to the fat cakes that you're going to produce tomorrow, and they might be different to fat cakes that you're going to produce a week after that. So what that does to your business, it's developed that inconsistency where your customers, they don't know today the fat cakes that they're going to buy, maybe they'll be too salty or maybe too much sugar, or sometimes they are okay. So you can't build a good customer relationship because every time they come to you, they don't know what to expect. And we know that as a person, you go to certain stores or to certain places, or you buy your stuff from certain areas because you know what to expect. You know the quality that you're expecting from that place. And if that is not consistent, remember, people come back because they know what they're looking for. Let's say today I feel like KFC, because you know how KFC tastes like. Today I feel like McDonald's, because you know how McDonald's tastes like. But if McDonald's was changing its taste every day, then how would you feel like McDonald's? Because you don't know, if you go to McDonald's, what are you going to get? What taste you're going to get when you get there? So that's where systems and procedures becomes critical for the business, to make sure that it's able to satisfy customers and maintain customer relationship, right? So, and you know, you are in business to satisfy your customers. That's one thing. That's why you are in business, because without customers, you don't have a business. So that's the second one in terms of the policies and procedures, the benefit of having policies and procedures. Remember, the first one I said, instill discipline, controls within the business, so that the employees, they know what to do, and if they don't do what they're supposed to do according to the policies and procedures, then you'll be able to take the disciplinary action. So that is purely for control. And the second one is for customer satisfaction or customer management, because your customers, they need to know the type of product or quality of product they expect from your organization. That's why they'll come and buy. So the second component is to make sure that you satisfy customers' needs. Okay, and the third one is to be efficient, right? So if you are in operation, sometimes you need to set standards on how your operation is supposed to operate. So there might be certain things that needs to be done on certain times, because without proper operational procedures, employees will do certain things on certain times and there will be a lot of waste. But once you standardize your operating processes, then it makes it easier and more efficient for employees to execute their responsibilities. Because if you don't have controls, you might find that if you are going back to the fat cake example, if you are cooking fat cakes, and if there's no standard procedures that you follow to cook the fat cakes, so one employee will start warming up the oil, the cooking oil, before they mix the dough. So the oil will be warming up while they haven't yet mixed the dough. And they'll mix the dough, they need to switch off the oil because it's getting too hot and the mix is not ready. That's a waste of electricity right there. And maybe whoever that is cooking is already waiting for the dough to come, but the dough is not coming. So it's a wasted time because there is no process that is being followed. But if you know that there's a process that when they come in, they start preparing the dough so that they can put it whatever and put it in whatever warming system so that it can be ready. while they're doing other things. And then once it's ready, then they will switch on the stove to warm up the cooking oil, and then once it's ready, then they put it in, and then they cook your fat cakes. That's the simple process. But without standardized procedures, they'll do things whenever they feel like, and that might not be an efficient way of operating. So it might be, it will be costly. And okay, I know that the example that I'm giving is okay. It's on the extreme. So, but most businesses, they're not operating efficiently because they don't standardize their processes. If you standardize your processes, that this is the things that I need to do when I clock in, and these are the things that I need to do during the day. These are standardized things. I'm doing the orders this day. I don't do the ordering on this day. I do site visits on this day, and I don't do them on this day. So without planning or having standardized procedures, you'll become efficient. Some things you can't see that you are inefficient because they're not straightforward. Because if you don't have maybe standardized processes or procedures to order your stock. Let's say you are running a spaza shop. You don't have days where you're ordering stock. You just order whenever. You end up to maybe ordering 2 things instead of ordering in bulk. Meaning you'll go to town every other day, and you're gonna go buy maybe few quantities and all that, and that will cost you money because you don't have a process that you follow to say, this is my order level, I'll order things on this day, whatever. There's this process so that you can order, not only go to order as you see this thing is finished, then you go order. So if you don't have processes, your job might be going up and down to town or to wherever, to your wholesaler to go buy, because you don't have standardized processes to see that the stock, I have this level of stock, and then when it reaches this point, then that's when I will order, and this is how I order in terms of the quantities, and then this is when I expect them to be delivered, so that you are able to plan around your stock when you order, so that you don't do too many trips back and forth going to your wholesaler, which will cost you money. So that's the importance of systems and procedures, to make sure that there are controls within the organization and employees understand what is expected from them. And if you have those 2 on lock, then you'll be able to satisfy your customer needs or customer demand. That's the background on having processes in place, having controls and procedures in place. Okay, so with that background, now we're going into our case studies. In the case studies, we'll start with AEY, right? Because with AEY, it's just everything that you shouldn't do in terms of how they approach their systems and procedures or their control systems. They were non-existent. So that's why I want to start with it. But mainly what you need to learn from the AEY story is that, okay, it's everything that you shouldn't do as an entrepreneur. And just as a background, AEY it's a tendering business based in the USA. And this case study is based on the movie War Dogs. So the War Dogs is a movie that's based on true story, where there were two guys who were bidding for the defense contracts, and they were doing so well that they even secured about 300 million Afghanistan contract, and they got arrested because they faked the documentation, they repackaged the ammunition, and they basically defrauded the US Defense Department, and they got arrested, and one was sentenced to jail and the other one was sentenced to house arrest because he cooperated with the authorities. So that's the background story. But their main business was on arms. They were only focused on tendering for defense contracts. That's all that they were doing. They were not tendering for any other government jobs. Their focus was on tendering for contracts, for defense contracts. So that's the background of the movie. And then for you to understand the story, you should watch the movie War Dogs. It will give you a nice background to it. And then here, what you're looking at is, because we're looking at the management controls and procedures. AEY didn't have controls in place. All they wanted to do is to make money. The controls came, it was secondary to their core business or their objective. So what they wanted is to chase money. All they did is to sift through the tenders, find the tenders that they can supply, and then bid for those tenders. And their focus was not on, initially, their focus was not on big tenders because they didn't have the money to be able to supply whatever the items that the government was looking for. So what they did, they built up their operations from tendering for small things like your masks, your few guns here and there, and they built up their business to being able to tender for a 300 million contract. Remember, when you're bidding for, depending on the size of the project, even in South Africa, when you're bidding for a contract or a job that is less than R1 million, it doesn't have to go on tender. They can just, a business or a department can just phone 3 suppliers to say, give us quotations on this thing. And then they get the quotations, and then they can appoint from there. So it's not necessarily competitive bidding. But if now you start bidding for contracts that are more than R1 million, then they need to go through a tender system according to PFMA, the Public Finance Management Act. So now you need to understand the difference between the two. So with Ephraim and them, they were tendering. Okay, they were tendering for small contracts where it's just requests for quotations. And as they grew, they started tendering for big contracts. All right. So when it came to controls, right, there were no controls. They were making money between the lines. So basically, Ephraim and David at AEY, they were operating in the gray. And that's something that you shouldn't do as an entrepreneur. Please make sure that you always have your clear policies and procedures. There are controls in place so that you don't get in trouble, because eventually they got arrested and sentenced to jail. Okay, mainly Ephraim was the one who was sentenced to jail because David cooperated with them, with the authorities. So, but what went wrong with in AEY when it comes to policies and procedures? One, they were non-existent. So Ephraim, who was the founder or the owner of AEY, he was a cowboy. All he wanted to do is to get the contract and deliver. The rest he was not interested. Okay, because you see that when he met David, he was bidding for a smaller contract. So what he will do is he bought a device that will change his voice. So he will phone the other officials who were ordering, or the end user, to ask them to pretend to be a general from within the army, to ask them if they received the quotation, and then say, no, please tell me what is your highest bidder there. So he was illegally finding out, in terms of the prices, what did the other competitors price their product, so that when he submits his bid, he will know that they priced so much, then I will put it at this level, this price. So that, because remember, tenders are about prices. So what he did with that system, he was able to get all the prices that were submitted, and then he was able to price a little below the lowest bidder, so that they award him. Because with the small contract, I mean, technically he will meet the requirement. The only thing that will be remaining is on pricing. So because he was able to find the prices, then he was able to win more contracts, because the end user or the supply chain department will tell him, thinking is the end user. So he'll phone supply chain department to say, how many bids have we received? Pretending to be the end user. And they will tell him, no, we received so many bids. What is the lowest price? And then the supply chain, because of that device, it will show that he was within US defense. Then they'll tell him the price. Then when he submits his bid, then you'll undercut everyone. That's how initially he built up the business. And that is illegal, right? It must not be part of, because the processes and procedure. So an organization put process and procedure, which will include how the employee is supposed to behave. Okay. And dishonesty, it will be one of the things that goes against your policies and procedures. So you must make sure that is taken care of. The employees must be honest in all their dealings. That's one of the values that needs to be stressed in your policies and procedure. More especially if you are in tendering business, because tendering business, we know even in South Africa, it's the most corrupt. Okay, it might not be the most corrupt, but it's highly corrupt business strategy or business sector that you can get in South Africa. Because we read stories in the newspapers, and we see people getting arrested because of tender fraud. So we know that it's highly charged, and illegal things, a lot of illegal things are happening there. But I'm not saying that there are no illegal activities in the private sector. Actually, the activities that are happening in the private sector, probably they're even more than the fraud that is going on with the tender system. But because only the tendering system or the fraud that are related to tenders are the ones that are being exposed. So now we are framed to think that being a tenderpreneur, it means a person is corrupt, which is not the case. I mean, large organizations like your Bidvest, your banks, they bid for state contract. They are tendering as well. So, but now with our media, they created this notion that tendering is only for corrupt people. And you know, like your Glencoe, the coal that they are mining, most of it, okay, they take the premium one they export the premium one, but the remaining one, they're selling it to the likes of Eskom. And in Eskom, the most general way that you get contract from Eskom is through a tendering process. So all these businesses are tendering. It's just that when it comes to maybe the tenderpreneurs, mainly black tenderpreneurs, because that's who we refer to as tenderpreneurs in South Africa, they painted this picture that they are the most corrupt business people you can get, which is they're just now painting them with the same brush, because there are legit business people who are doing tenders. Like as I said, that on big corporates, they are also doing their business. Basically, Glencoe's business is sustained by Eskom's tenders. So they are tenderpreneurs, but obviously the definition is mainly referring to smaller players, smaller black players who are doing business with government, not the big boys, because it's how the media is reporting it. All right. So what I'm saying, okay, is that if you are in the space of tendering, make sure that you have proper controls in place, that you kept the behavior like the one from Ephraim of being, like it's close to being, is criminal. Okay, it's not close. It's actually criminal for you to illegally find out the bidding prices so that you can bid lower. That's criminal. So you need to set up your processes and procedure to prevent and discourage employees to behave that way. So from AEY, what you can learn is that as I said when you started the lesson, is that from AEY, these are the things that you shouldn't do. So you should learn about the things that you're not supposed to do. So that's one, the Ephraim one. And the second one, when they realize that, because if you have controls, obviously honesty is one of the key things. So employees should be honest. If they are not honest, then you have a problem as an organization. So dishonesty is key to any organization, for sustainability of any organization. So now, from War Dogs, you can see that there were no internal controls when it came to procurement, right? Because what happened when the Italians they didn't inform. When the end user informed AEY that the Italians have sanctioned Iraq or they've banned doing business with Iraq, then they did something illegal they call circumvention, where they took the arms and then they say, no, we'll pretend that we are buying the arms is to deliver them in Jordan, and then from Jordan they wanted to transport them to Iraq. So they were doing something illegal, and so that they can still deliver. But if you have systems and procedures in place, the controls, there are certain things that should be in that policy to say, obviously, you shouldn't break the law as an organization. It's one of the control mechanisms that we can put in place to say, as a business, we shouldn't be breaking the law. Okay, and then again, you saw with that's the one part to say employees supposed to be honest all the time, but you can see with them lying to the Italians that the guns are going to Jordan, and from knowing that actually they are going to Iraq. That's pure dishonesty. So if you don't have a policy within your organization that discourages and punishes employees that are dishonest, then you are running a risk of your organization failing, because you might be the hawks might visit you because you're doing certain things that you're not supposed to be doing. Okay, that's the second one in terms of the policy that you need to put in place, or you should put in place, and AEY didn't. Okay, now the third one, you look at the payment of suppliers, right? So you should have standard procedures that you follow. Let's say a supplier, the ordering system, there should be a system that you put in place, or procedures or processes that you put in place to order stuff from your suppliers. And there must be processes and procedures to pay the suppliers. So we saw with the AEY, after they've repackaged them, or they hired a third party to repackage the ammunition or the bullets, because they were Chinese bullets and they didn't want to deliver them as Chinese bullets when they were delivering it Afghanistan. So they hired this guy from a private company so that he can repackage the bullets for them, but they didn't pay the guy because Ephraim didn't. Okay, I guess he was the CEO, but you can see there were no processes because it was Ephraim who's supposed to pay. But for a business that is making, or that won 300 million tender, there's supposed to be processes that needs to be followed. An invoice maybe issued and sent to the finance department. Finance department supposed to process the invoice, and then you pay. Whoever who's authorizing supposed to authorize the payment. But by the look of things, Ephraim was everything. He was the CEO, operations, finance, legal advisor, and everything. So now that's one of the problems when it comes to internal controls with AEY, because Ephraim was doing everything as the CEO. Call it the MD, the CEO. So it's not how systems supposed to be implemented. With systems, there must be what they call segregation of duties. An operational staff should be able to do certain things, most especially when it comes to ordering, to payments. They should process a component of the invoices, and somebody else independent must authorize and approve. So you can see from AEY's perspective, there were no controls in between Ephraim and the actual transaction. So Ephraim, as the CEO, decisions were made on the spot. He can do whatever that he wants because he didn't instill that culture of having systems and procedures in place. And the other one that you'll see that there were no systems and procedures is when the the Pentagon was conducting due diligence on them to see if they really had capacity to deliver on that 300 million tender. So they didn't have financial records in place. So before the meeting, they had to fake the bank statement, they had to fake their financial records, so that when they go and present, the financial records will reflect that they were capable of delivering on that transaction. Okay, that's one of the poor controls that you can have in the business, of not having proper financial system and not having proper financial controls in place. Because remember, if you have a business, right, you might, if depending on the level of your income, there might be amount that you're supposed to pay to SARS, and whatever that you're paying or not paying, remember, within 5 years, SARS can conduct an audit. And if they're conducting an audit and you don't have the financial system and controls in place, you wouldn't find the records like AEY did. Then you're gonna start faking records, and doing that is illegal, one, and then two, it might not support the amounts that you have claimed, so you might be in trouble with SARS. So you need to make sure that as a business you put proper controls, including a financial management system and record retention. Because sometimes, yes, you might not have an internal, you might not have internal accountant or a fully functioning internal financial department, or financial management department. But even the records that you send to your accountant, you must always have a copy of those records, so that if anything happens to those records, then you have a backup in terms of the documentation that you have within the business. So, but from Word docs, you can see that there were no financial controls that existed in the business. So these are some of the weaknesses that I have identified from the movie Word docs, in terms of financial controls, in terms of operational controls, in terms of employee controls. They were lacking in implementing controls. And I must say that I'm not surprised that they were eventually arrested for not paying the box guy, and for mainly the charge was for them repackaging the ammunition, falsifying the records. Because you can see, without systems and procedures, that created a culture of negligence, a culture of criminality. So you shouldn't operate like that. You must operate professionally. You might be a small business, one-man show, 2 people. You need to start with systems and procedures from the beginning, so that you build that culture. As your organization grow, then it will grow with that mentality, with that culture of compliance, of systems, of procedures. Your business will go a long way if you implement systems. We're going to go into the McDonald's case study, and I'm telling you, with the McDonald's, what made McDonald's successful is their systems and procedures. Now coming to the McDonald's system, or McDonald's is king of systems. McDonald's expanded and achieved what it achieved because it has implemented proper systems and procedures in terms of standardizing its operation. And as well, personally, I believe most small businesses, they fail because they don't implement systems in place. Why I'm thinking that? Because remember, we have, if you look at any research, or most research, when it looks at reasons why business fail, they'll tell you about maybe access to market, they'll tell you about access to funding, lack of skills, maybe government red tape, poor financial management controls, or poor strategy, and maybe those are averagely in your top 10. But they hardly mention systems and procedures. But I believe that if you have these challenges where you have no access to market, you don't have funding, poor financial management control, poor spending, lack of strategy, all of this now boils down to lack of systems. Why am I saying that? Because remember, if you have systems in place and procedures that you need to follow, even with the market, you'll have a dedicated processes and procedures that you're gonna do as a business to secure markets. And even when it comes to access to funding, you'll know there are certain processes and procedures that you'll commit to doing to make sure that you access funding. When it comes to strategy, if you have processes and procedures in place to execute the strategy, then you shouldn't go wrong. And without processes and procedures and systems, you will tend to go into the wrong market, because you're not structured in your way of thinking. Because if you start with putting together the systems and procedures as a small business, then you'll follow certain principles when you do certain things, right? So you wouldn't start that business and maybe sell fat cakes, as I was giving example of fat cakes earlier, if you didn't follow processes of developing a business plan. So without you following the process of developing a business plan, which is you need to identify the opportunity, you need to do feasibility study, you need to make sure that you do your market research, you need to make sure that you develop your operational plan, you need to make sure that you do your proper financial analysis, right? Yes, you can still fail after you've done all this, right? But the chances of you failing by doing proper background checks and following proper procedures or processes of developing a business plan are a little bit lower than if you don't follow this process at all. I don't know if I'm making sense, because each and every activity that you do in your business must have policies and procedures that you follow, the standards that you are going to follow to execute that part. So the first thing, then it means if you have taken a wrong strategy, it means the process and your processes and your procedures are not working. Because you should have, if you're following proper processes and procedures, you should have before you decide on the strategy, you need to do viability study. Is this strategy viable? Can you execute it profitably? And the business model that you're going to use, you will interrogate those things. And so you wouldn't, believe me, I mean, in life you can't, there are no guarantees, right? But if you follow processes, you follow standards, you follow procedures, you're limiting the risk of doing the wrong things, right? I spoke about the market thing to say access to market is what is causing most SMMEs to fail. But if they follow processes, when you're accessing markets, you need to engage the market. You need to do market feasibility. Is the market feasible? Once you determine, you have ascertained that the market is feasible, then you do your proper market research. Remember, feasibility and market research are not, sometimes you use them interchangeably, but they're not the same. The market is feasible, you can enter this market in this place. Né? But how you should enter the market and the size of the market and all that, it's on the market research. So when you're doing the market research, you want to see if the market is viable. All right, feasibility and viability studies are two different things. So when you're doing your market research, you are looking at the market closely to say, is it viable? And when you're doing the feasibility study, is to check if this project is feasible. Is it doable? You mustn't confuse the two, because I receive requests from clients to say, we're looking for, can you do a feasibility study for us? Then I ask the question, do you want a feasibility study or a viability study? Because those are the two things. Those two things are different. So what I'm saying is, if you have systems in place before you take you initiate a project, before you're going to blame access to market as the problem, you would have done your spade work based on your systems. You do your spade work to see if you can enter this market, if this market is feasible, if this market is viable. Because access to market, it becomes a symptom of not having systems and procedures in place. Then also with access to funding, it's the same thing. If you want to, you start a project, if you don't have processes that you're going to follow, if you don't have standards that you're going to follow and procedures, you will just enter this market and not understanding the environment in which the funding institutions support players in that space. Because the problem is not access to funding, is entrepreneurs going into businesses or projects or starting projects that cannot be funded. Because if you have proper systems and procedures, you wouldn't have decided to take that project anyway. You would have taken a different project. Maybe you would have taken a project, or you would have initiated a project that doesn't require you to access funding. You would have followed the business plan processes that you should have within the organization. You would have followed your financial management and control processes to say, for us to raise funding, we need 1, 2, 3, 4. Who is there? Who are the stakeholders in the space? What are the funding requirements? Do we meet the requirements? And then once you meet the requirements of the funding institution, then you initiate that project. Yes, you might still, you might not get the funding at the end of the day, but the chances of you not getting the funding are lower because you've done the processes, you have investigated the funders, you investigated the project that you want to start. So systems and procedures are a cornerstone of your business. Now, that's on the other, maybe more especially on the SMME side, to say SMMEs are failing because they don't put systems in place before everything else. So before you start, you need to have your systems set up so that everything that you do from there on, you are using the system. You refer to the procedures that need to be followed. You are referring to the standards that you need to comply with. You are referring to the processes that you need to follow. Then that now builds a different culture altogether. Rather than the culture of jumping into things, you start saying, no, I want to start manufacturing laptops. And then you say, no, corporates are not giving me access to market because they don't want to buy my laptop. To do your spade work to understand how that sector operates. If it's practical for you to access that sector. Now, most of the time it's because you didn't do the spade work. Then you're going to blame access to market. Funding, same thing. Have you investigated this? Have you prepared the business plan? Have you followed the standards of preparing the business plan? Have you looked at the funders in terms of their mandates and all that? And then have you looked at the feasibility, viability of your project before you even approach the funding institutions? So those things, you are guided by the systems and procedures. So for me, systems and procedures are critical for survival of SMMEs. For an SMME to be successful, they need to have systems and procedures in place. That's why at Super Dealmakers we have developed key tools to help you set up the systems, because we understand that that's the main cause of many business failures. So if you go on our platform, you can see that we developed tools to enable you to develop a business plan within minutes. You can develop a project, because most SMEs, they don't have project development system. You can develop the supply chain management system. You can develop your financial management controls, and you can generate your financial projections quickly. You can develop your skills plans and many, many more tools that you can use from our Super Dealmaker app, because putting systems in place is critical for a business, not only SMMEs. That's why now, because we're looking at the case study of McDonald's, that's what made McDonald's successful. They've put together the systems. And why as well, apart from the things that I've mentioned, to say they will help you to to improve the processes, but they also help you to manage your business. So if you have an employee starting today, or you get hit by a bus, God forbid, then your business will stop operating because the employees wouldn't know what to do. But if you have proper systems and procedures, they will know what to do because they'll just have to refer to your system and procedure manuals, and they'll see what we do, how do we deal with the banks and all that, how do we deal with customers, how do we deal with our suppliers, where do we find information, how do we save information, like how are we supposed to communicate with our stakeholders and all that. So you'll have all the systems and procedures in place so that if anything happens to you, or even if you are not there, you can manage your business. A friend of mine generally says, no, SMEs are not in business, are in business. So they're just busy because they don't have systems and procedures. So to avoid being in business, you need to make sure that you put systems and procedures in place, and you can now go to whatever, Dubai, and relax, and you know that your business is running because it's got systems in place for it to run. That's how critical systems are. Apart from how they cause failure, because without systems you are applying to fail. They also allow succession planning. They also allow empowering employees. They also give you time as an entrepreneur to step outside the system or the business and manage your business, because employees will know what to do. It will be a soft touch. Your business will be a soft touch because everyone will know what to do if they find themselves in a specific situation. So that's how critical the systems and procedures are. Now, coming back to McDonald's, as I said, McDonald's is what it is because of the systems that they've implemented. There's nothing special. I mean, even if you look at all the franchises that are out there, they are franchises because they didn't do anything innovative. The only innovative thing, yes, they can have a product, but I mean, a product is a product. Remember how many businesses are selling burgers out there? It's not like McDonald's burger is special in any way. Okay. Yes, it's different how they make it. They have a system, they have consistency, and they have a taste that people like. And anyone can do that. It's not a complicated process, or even though you won't get it, the taste as the McDonald's brothers got it, but you will be close. The only difference is that the McDonald's brothers designed a system that works. A most speedy system. It was the most efficient system that you can get, because how they make burgers, they move less steps than any other fast food chain. Okay, Mara, maybe now there might be others that have improved the system, is close to the McDonald's. But for McDonald's, it's not only the internal or the shop system, it's even outside. Remember, within the shop, they know the crew's supposed to do this when you come in. The person who's on the fry stand is supposed to do this. The person who's doing the dressing is doing this. The cashier is supposed to behave like this. The person who's running the storeroom is supposed to run like this. That's what systems are. Those are procedures at McDonald's. They are standard. You go from one McDonald's somewhere here in Polokwane to McDonald's in Karoo, they will do the same thing. They produce the same burger because they are following the same processes. They are following the same procedures. And it doesn't end there. That's the internal operational systems and procedures that McDonald's have implemented, right? And that goes a long way. So now, even now with the supply chain, now we're getting outside the operations, where the operation is on lock. We know the day one, if you are a crew, if you are a manager, if you are a shift manager, you'll know what to do, because there are systems, there are procedures that are outlined for you. So yes, you need to train them and show them around, but you don't have to spend days and days training them, because They just have to go through the systems and procedures. It makes it easier. They will read through and they'll start operating. So with McDonald's, you can fire the crew, you can fire all of them, but in 2 days you'll be operating as if nothing happened, because there are systems and procedures. There are processes that you need to follow. But if it was Shisanyama, whoever, that was, if you fire them, okay, maybe Shisanyama, you just have to fry the meat, but the meat might not be the same as the meat that was being fried by the people that you fired, because you don't have systems and procedures in place. So if you fire everyone, whatever they're going to produce, yes, they can still produce fried meat, but the taste might not be, or will not be the same as the previous ones, because they wouldn't know what to do and how the previous team fried the meat. And yes, customers will be surprised to say what happened. But at McDonald's, if you fire the crew today, I'm telling you, the crew that you're going to get the following day will give you that Big Mac that tastes like any other Big Mac. It's because they have systems in place. They have processes, they have procedures. But with the McDonald's system, that doesn't end there. They also have their proper supply chain systems and procedures and processes. For you to be a supplier for McDonald's, you need to comply with a lot of procedures. You need to follow certain procedures. You need to do your things the McDonald's way, as they call it. So you need to follow, so that you are not, if you are supplying them with buns, you can't be different from the guy who's supplying them with buns in Russia. The product that you are producing, it should be similar to the product that is produced in Russia while you are in South Africa. If you are supplying them with ice cream, the same thing. The quality of the ice cream in Russia should be the same as the quality of the ice cream in South Africa. Yes, there might be little subtle differences because of the weather and the environmental factors. They might have that influence, but they strive to maintaining the same quality product, even in their supply chain. Not only internal, how they buy, when you're supposed to buy, the ordering system, the suppliers, the storage of their product. They make sure that they do the same thing. And you can see it even when Ray was developing his store, right? Because Chicago was different in terms of the environment. Chicago was different from San Bernardino, because San Bernardino apparently is like a desertish kind of environment. His chips were not coming out similar to the one in San Bernardino. So he struggled to get the quality to be the same. He had to go back to study what the McDonald's brothers did in San Bernardino and what he did, and even called the brothers. They came. So the objective there was to get the chips to taste exactly the same as the chips in San Bernardino. That's the struggle that they eventually, but they've realized that actually the storage for Chicago was supposed to be underground, because the weather in San Bernardino, because it was more dry weather than in Chicago, the storage was affecting the potatoes differently. So now that's how deep they go into making sure that they produce the same quality chips or fries, if you want to call it that. But ultimately, it comes back to the system. So they didn't want to deviate from the taste that they were producing. Consistent quality, consistent taste, and consistent speed. That was made McDonald's. So if you want to build a sustainable business, you need to look at those things. You need to look at your processes to make sure that you have standardized processes, you have standardized procedures, you have standardized controls, that to make sure that you produce consistent quality, so that day after day, year after year, you are continuously producing the same quality product. Okay. So when it comes to systems, McDonald's is your case study. You need to make sure that you understand how they build their system and learn and then adopt it to your enterprise. Because I strongly believe that many businesses, they're not failing because of other reasons. It's because they didn't have processes and procedures in place. They don't have systems in place. Now we'll go in AEY. We'll just touch on it because now we've seen what you're not supposed to do. No, we've done AEY. So we'll see with AEY, it told us what not to do, right? And then McDonald's is showing us what to do. And then we'll get to the Oakland A's as well, just to support as well. The Oakland A's, they had a system, right? Their system is, okay, they introduced a new system. They had an old recruitment system or a system of buying players. But because the big players continuously bought their top players, then they had to change their system of buying players. That's key. Because as a business, you might have one system, a system that is working in a certain way. But as the competitors are improving, you might have to change your operating system to be more efficient. That's what Billy did at the Oakland A's. That system was not, okay, it would have worked if the big teams were not poaching his players. But it was not working for him. So he had to come with a different system for him to remain competitive. And it will happen to you as an entrepreneur that from time to time you need to come up with a different system to be competitive in the market. So what Billy did was to adopt that Billy James system of selecting players. Instead of using scouts to go out there scout, he used the computer system that he hired Pete to do. So that's now systems and procedures. Remember this one with the Oakland A, it was changing the dynamics, the operations, the operating model of the Oakland A's. So as an entrepreneur, you need to be always on the lookout to find new ways of doing certain things, because you can't continue to do, you can, I guess, but ideally you shouldn't just do the same thing like you did 30 years ago. You must always look at innovative way of doing certain things and develop different systems to make sure that you are more efficient, like Billy did with the player selection. But the player selection system was not a standalone. It had to go hand in hand with the playing system. And we know initially Coach Art didn't want to adopt the new system, and the Oakland A's lost, I think, their first 10 games or whatever. They were not performing well because the system that the coach was using, it was not suitable to the type of players that the new system, the new recruitment system was, to the players that it was bringing into the club. So because of that mismatch, the Oakland A's initially they were losing until Billy had to trade some of the players that the coach was using, so that to force the coach to adopt the playing pattern that is required by the new recruitment system. So when you're looking at your systems and procedures, if you change certain parts of the system, you should make sure that the other parts as well, they follow, they complement the new system. Because without your system, the whole organizational system complementing each other, you might be in trouble because there will be a mismatch, and that can cost you efficiency. So, for example, you can implement an operational system, or maybe you implement a training system. But that training system, it might not work well. Like I'm just giving an example. We might implement an online training system, but you might find that online training system, it doesn't work well with the CETA system, where they don't recognize the processes and procedures or the training method that you are using in your online system. So it means they will not sign off on your learners, because the system the new system, it might be efficient, It might be providing even better quality training, but because it doesn't fit into their system of the way of doing things, you might struggle to get your learners to be signed off by the SETAs. And if you are providing an accredited training and your learners are not being signed off by the SETA or QCTO, then it's as good as not, should have not provided the accredited training. So when you are implementing systems, make sure that they work across your supply chain, from the customer management to logistics to operations to acquisitions to performance management. So your system that you are implementing, if you are adopting maybe an innovative system like Billy did with the Oakland ACE, then you need to make sure that the system works across your organization, because it might work here, but maybe it might not fit into another portion of your business, and that now can cause your business to be inefficient. So that's now the case studies on the case studies. We've looked at AEY. Basically, with AEY, those are the things that you must not do as an entrepreneur. Don't adopt that behavior from AEY. And the Mcdonald is your ideal organization that you need to learn from when it comes to implementation of the system. And with the Oakland A's, they introduced a new system, and the learnings there is you need to make sure that your systems are aligned. If you are changing one component, make sure that the rest of the supply chain process of your business are also realigned, because you might not be as efficient, or you might not deliver the result that you were expecting from the new innovative system. All right, that's our lesson for today, and I thank you.